favourite thing about being an MP?
My favourite thing about being a Member of Parliament is really the range of people I get to meet and the range of different issues that I get involved with. When I left university and decided I wanted to go into politics, I wanted something that was going to be varied and challenging and gave me a chance to meet people from all walks of life. Some of my friends from uni went on to become perhaps the most specialised person in the world on the subject of aircraft leasing. That's not the sort of job or the not sort of vocation that I wanted to pursue.
Now, if the Treasury miraculously found a spare £1 billion and it was up to you how to spend it, but you could only spend it on one thing, what would you choose and why?
I would choose to spend it on housing. Housing is the single biggest challenge that certainly young people face nowadays. It's something that successive governments have said that they wanted to do something about, but I'm afraid successive governments, including the one I was involved with, the coalition government, didn't really address successfully.
Now, given the rapid evolution of technology, it's possible at some point in the future that the electorate might be able to vote for bills directly in the Houses of Parliament. Now, do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing? And in such a scenario, what would you see the role of an MP being?
Well, I guess in such a scenario, MPs might be redundant. We might be looking for jobs. I think that the difficulty with that is that there are really complex issues which sometimes it's hard to know the ins and outs of without having done a lot of work, and Brexit immediately springs to mind. That devolving responsibility for taking those decisions to the wider public might not necessarily come up with the right solutions. A good example might be, for instance, getting rid of parking charges. No one likes parking charges, or getting rid of parking tickets or fines that are issued to people. But in practice, that's something which is needed to keep our streets flowing freely. So handing it over in a way that perhaps doesn't allow the full extent of the impact of a particular measure, I think there are considerable risks associated with that.
And then, do you favour the carrot or the stick? Is it better to reward people for good behaviour or to punish them for bad behaviour? For example, with the use of plastic bags or the consumption of sugary drinks?
I would say that the best approach is one that is likely to use carrots initially, but there does come a point where sticks have to be implemented. In other words, the supermarkets encouraging people initially to use recyclable bags or use bags for life, that did work to some extent, but unfortunately it was only when the stick of a charge on each plastic bag was introduced that actually we saw a very substantial drop. I think a drop of something like 85% in the use of plastic bags. So sometimes a voluntary approach can work, but we have to, I think, keep in the back pocket that there might be a stick if the voluntary approach has failed. Another good example of where this may be needed is in relation to, for instance, salt and sugar in food or fat in food, where successive governments have tried to get the industry to respond to this. That has been an incredibly slow process, and many people, myself included, have reached the conclusion that you need a stick to make it happen, because otherwise it's not going to happen.
Now, we note the publicity surrounding the use of WhatsApp groups in Parliament. Do you think the use of WhatsApp groups by MPs is a good or bad thing for democracy, and why?
Well, I think it's a good use of technology really in any field. So, for instance, my office team, so the people who run my office, who draft letters for me, deal with casework queries, telephone calls, we have a WhatsApp group, and so if there's perhaps a notice that's come in, we got one a couple of days ago about white powder having been sent to MPs' offices. Someone can immediately circulate through the WhatsApp group what that information notice said about that issue, so everyone knows immediately. The same applies to a number of WhatsApp groups in relation to members of Parliament. It's just an effective way of communicating, and I think that's a positive thing. The quicker and the easier communication between members of Parliament is, and this is often WhatsApp groups that are cross-party. It helps cross-party cooperation, and in the past certainly the public have wanted to see parties work together as opposed to simply dissing each other's policies, and WhatsApp groups facilitate that.
Who is your favourite MP in another party and why?
Well, it's got to be Ken Clarke, someone who has consistently for the whole of his political career held very similar views to mine on the subject of the European Union. In other words, he's not someone who is blinded to the benefits of the EU, but does see that there are concrete benefits from the point of view of the economy, but also our relationship with other EU countries and indeed our presence in the world, and someone who is not scared to consistently articulate that. I would see him very much as a voice of reason on this issue in Parliament, when I'm afraid to say that on the Conservative benches the voice of reason on the question of Brexit are very few and far between.